I knew something was off the moment my desk phone buzzed at 3:47 a.m. That hour only welcomes three kinds of calls: dying relatives, drunk exes, or servers crying for help. This time, it was the third. No ring, no flashing light, just a soft ping buried deep in the system logs, like a whisper from the underworld. I rolled over, scribbled the timestamp into the notebook I kept on my nightstand, and went back to sleep. Not startled, not anxious, just calmly noting a pulse, still beating, still alive. Next morning, I walked into the office as I had for the last 22 years. Same travel mug of bitter coffee, same Costco Danish warmed to a chewy disappointment in the break room microwave. Nobody looked up. They never did. I was Camille from IT. Not the team lead, not a manager, just the person people emailed when the printer jammed or when their Zoom backgrounds glitched. A ghost with a cubicle. And that was fine. I liked being the ghost. My world was a mix of legacy servers, Perl scripts older than some interns, and system diagrams drawn in ballpoint pen. One of those ancient scripts, a personal favorite, was buried beneath layers of migrations and firewalls and depended on a signal. A heartbeat. It pulsed once every 6 hours from one specific desk phone. Mine. Quick sidebar, because I know 96% of you watching this haven't subscribed. I'm out here handing you tales of caffeine-soaked sabotage and network-level vengeance for free, while my editor is living on instant noodles and IOUs. So smash that subscribe button. It helps. Anyway, that heartbeat script had no label in the repo, no doc string, just a comment that read, "Remove only if you know what this does." It sent a silent handshake every 360 minutes. If the signal was interrupted, it didn't trigger alarms or klaxons. It just escalated. Quietly. Slowly. Methodically. First, it alerted the system. Then, the backup systems. Then, off-site shell servers. If all those failed to respond, the protocol advanced to critical containment. No fireballs. Just quiet deletion of the production image and a lock on the failover data center. It was designed in a time when fail-safes had fail-safes, and nobody trusted the cloud farther than they could traceroute it. The only reason it still worked? Nobody ever touched my phone. Beige, dusty, with a curly cord that smelled like coffee and disinfectant. I even replaced the keypad with a post-it that read, "Do not unplug." Turns out, that was all it took. Most days, the phone just sat there, quietly humming. New hires thought Command Line was a streaming platform. But I knew. I checked it religiously. Not out of paranoia, out of preparedness. People like me don't assume best-case scenarios. We build nets under the nets. We write the documentation for the documentation. We are the ones who ensure the lights stay on. But slowly, everything around me started to change. The old executives, the ones who knew my name and remembered I wrote the continuity plan during the 2010 data center crash, retired, replaced by buzzwords and confidence. My team got renamed Enablement, which apparently meant cut costs and blame Camille. Still, I kept the heartbeat going, every 6 hours. No applause needed. Then came Brandon. He walked in on a Tuesday wearing a too-tight sport coat and a confident smirk, like a startup founder auditioning for a TED Talk. I felt the pulse skip, figuratively and maybe literally. Brandon was introduced as our transformation lead. His handshake was weak but aggressive, like he was trying to crush your hand without bending his elbow. "Just call me Brandon," he said. "Titles build walls." And just like that, I knew something was about to rot. Brandon's first act as transformation lead, a role apparently second only to God, was to call a mandatory town hall. 8 a.m., sharp. Free donuts, stale coffee, and the corporate equivalent of a eulogy for everything that had ever worked. I sat in the back with my notebook closed and pen uncapped. I'd been through these before. The dot-com bust, The Y2K overreaction, the great SharePoint debacle of 2014. Each one had been dressed up as innovation. Each one left scars. Brandon's PowerPoint loaded. Slide 2 read, "Our efficiency mandate," in Comic Sans, which felt like a cry for help. Underneath were 4 bullets: reduce friction, modernize tools, automate legacy workflows, reevaluate long tenure redundancy. There it was. No one spoke, but I felt the air shift. Long tenure redundancy wasn't just a bullet point. It was a loaded gun. That's HR speak for, "Let's fire the people who actually know how anything works." Brandon delivered the line like he was announcing cake. Then came a monologue about the burden of outdated systems and how we needed to let go of what no longer serves us. His eyes flicked toward me, just once, like he was daring himself to pull the trigger. I raised my coffee mug. He smirked back, not kindly. After the meeting, I returned to my cube and opened my incident log. Nothing was broken, yet. But I knew it wouldn't be long. People like Brandon don't maintain systems. They disrupt them and call it vision. By Thursday, he had already deleted 3 shared drives and disabled a scheduled task that had been rotating audit logs in the background for over a decade. One of my junior techs asked him why. His answer? "If it's flagged as legacy and has no active data, it's clutter. I'm decluttering." Translation: I don't recognize it, so it must be useless. I confronted him, calmly, professionally, explained that the script he just nuked was the only thing keeping our compliance logs from bloating the system and crashing the storage node. He shrugged. "Sounds like a process problem. We'll fix it in the next sprint." I asked if he even understood what the script did before deleting it. He replied, "If it mattered, it would be in the cloud." Let me be clear. I wrote that script in 2007 on a weekend while recovering from the flu, after the CTO called me in a panic about failing disk space. That little utility had survived 4 department restructures, 2 acquisitions, and 1 fire drill that triggered a full DR simulation. Now it was gone. And something inside me stirred. Not anger, not pride, something older, something colder, like the sound of a lock disengaging. That Thursday, Brandon launched a floor audit. In theory, a harmless activity. In practice, a performative culling of non-essential hardware. He strutted the floor with a Bluetooth headset and a clipboard, flanked by Caleb from procurement, who pushed a bin labeled "Deprecate" like a trash collector at a digital funeral. They came for desk fans, old monitors, unopened modems. I knew what was coming. I'd seen it before. I kept typing. Incident logs, network thresholds, uptime ratios. Just another day in IT purgatory, until they reached my desk. Brandon leaned over my monitor and said, voice dripping with sarcasm, "Landline still plugged in? Didn't realize we were curating a museum exhibit." I replied, steady, "It serves a purpose." He grinned. "Sure it does." Then, without warning, he reached down and yanked the cord free. The coil snapped loose with a dry, plasticky pop. My breath caught in my throat. Brandon dangled the phone by its cord like it was a dead rat. "We'll recycle it," he said. "Or maybe donate it to the Smithsonian. This thing belongs in a Cold War exhibit." Caleb laughed. The others nearby chuckled nervously. No one understood what he'd just done. But I did. Because that wasn't just any phone. It was the phone. The one with the heartbeat. The one wired, literally, into the root scripts of our disaster recovery shell. The one no one was supposed to unplug. It didn't scream. It didn't set off alarms. It didn't fry the servers. That wasn't the design. The script was more patient than that. First, it waited, logged the missed handshake, gave a little grace. Then it pinged the mirrored backups. If they didn't reply, it escalated, step by step. Like a chess engine programmed to sacrifice pawns until it could declare checkmate. And if nothing responded within 96 hours, it would lock the failover data center into pin-it mode a state where only a physical token stored in a fireproof case in my basement could override the kill chain. Brandon didn't know any of this. Why would he? None of it was documented. I never put it in Confluence, Jira, or the onboarding docs. That was the point. You don't post your dead man switch on a public wiki where some intern might click it by mistake. I built it quiet, local, resilient. And now he'd pulled the thread. He moved on, already criticizing someone else's dual monitors. Caleb dropped the beige relic into the bin. It clunked against an old surge protector and what looked like a VCR. I just sat there, frozen. No rage, no panic, just clarity. Cold and focused. After a few seconds, I logged into a system nobody else remembered existed. Entered a password nobody else knew. Opened the incident log. There it was. Missed ping. Timestamp 11:43 a.m. Thursday. Script 1. Sent. Script 2. Queued. Script 3. Scheduled +96H. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I did something that would terrify any HR rep. I stood up, picked up my bag, walked to the elevator, didn't make a scene, didn't call a meeting, didn't confront Brandon, didn't say a word. Behind me, I heard his voice echo across the floor. You ever seen someone so attached to a landline? No one responded. They didn't know. But I did. He had pulled the tripwire, and the countdown had begun. I didn't return to my desk that day. I drove home with the kind of dead-eyed calm you earn after 2 decades in IT, watching executives break things they don't understand, then blame the damage on legacy. No one called. No one emailed. As far as they were concerned, I'd already been written off as redundant. Just a middle-aged woman in orthopedic flats who knew RAID levels like other people knew their kids' birthdays. The next morning, I arrived early, 6:15 a.m. The night shift security guard didn't even look up, just buzzed me through like always. I sat at my cube and performed a ritual I had rehearsed in my mind for years. I downloaded my exit, 1 encrypted archive, 1 key file, both zipped and transferred onto a USB drive I had worn around my neck for the last 6 years, disguised beneath a lanyard that read, Cat Mom, Code Queen. I wiped my laptop clean. No snarky messages, no goodbye gifts. Just a post-it note stuck to the screen that said, System retired. Questions? Ask the cloud. I left my plant. Dead for 6 months, but too sentimental to toss. Left my last half roll of Twizzlers. Left the mug that said, World's okayest engineer. Didn't swipe my badge on the way out. Let the exit sensor beep into nothing. Then I drove. Past the city line. Past the gas station where I used to grab jerky and cheap coffee before Friday stand-ups. Past the town where I'd grown up. 23 miles later, I pulled into the gravel lot behind a rundown self-storage complex off County Route 7. Entered the PIN. Door 119 creaked open like a sleepy crypt. Inside was my cathedral of paranoia. Plastic tubs, stacked bankers' boxes, obsolete hardware arranged like relics in a personal museum of forgotten systems. Network cables coiled like resting vipers. Spiral notebooks labeled by year and incident. In the far corner, a dusty old rack. 2 servers, one still faintly humming. Kept alive by a trickle charger and a Verizon line I'd been paying for out of pocket since 2015. I stepped inside and pulled the door shut behind me. The light overhead flickered on, motion triggered, soft and yellow. I stood there for a while, not angry, not triumphant, just still. This was what I had built, what I had guarded, not out of spite, not even out of pride, but because someone had to. I opened box 7C, pulled out a battered spiral notebook. Scribbled across the front in blue Sharpie, Dr. Switch Architecture, V1.2. Inside, hand-drawn signal trees, escalation logic, timestamp failover pathways. At the back, a Polaroid I'd taped in of my cat Franklin, curled up beside the old recovery server. Underneath, my handwriting read, "They will forget. That's the point." I ran my fingers over the page. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was entropy. A system reaching its natural conclusion. A machine built to survive chaos, finally waking up to do its job. I could stop it. The kill switch was here, in a fireproof bag labeled, "If you know, you know." All it would take was one call, one key. But I didn't. I sat down in the old rolling chair I'd stashed back in 2016 after facilities upgraded everyone to ergonomic mesh. Crossed my legs, opened my thermos, and watched the LED blink every 4 seconds. Still alive, still breathing. Back at HQ, the decay began. Friday morning, Brandon sent out a Slack message that read, "Ignore the backup failure logs. Known issue. Working on modernization." Underneath, a pie chart labeled System Health, 82% colored green, as if green could make it true. Meanwhile, the overnight backup job didn't complete. Checksum mismatches appeared in the Eastern file mirror. A JIRA ticket was filed. Brandon closed it within 10 minutes. "Redundant system, flag evolving, false alert." Camille was 87 miles away when the system started screaming. She wasn't watching from a dashboard. She was in a cabin she'd rented under an alias. No neighbors, spotty cell service. By design. But the system found her, because that's what it was built to do. When the primary heartbeat failed, the system activated its secondary protocols. Redundant monitoring nodes began pinging obscure subnets, shells I had planted over the years like digital landmines. Quiet, hidden, precise. Each ping lit up my terminal like candles at a vigil. Ping 1, mirror, a mismatch. Ping 2, our sync failure on 4 nodes. Ping 3, heartbeat override 0 when initializing. Each alert came with a timestamp, a path, and a sound. An old wave file I'd buried in the code long ago. One short meow. Franklin, my cat, still speaking to me from beyond. I didn't flinch, just pulled my blanket tighter and scribbled notes in the margin of my notebook. Back at HQ, rot spread like mold in the walls. Michael, the junior sysadmin who still called me Miss Camille when he thought no one was listening, resigned without a word. His desk was cleared by noon. His ticket history showed 5 alerts marked user error. One of them was a cascading RAID sync failure. Brandon replied to the report with a gif of a raccoon shoving a laptop off a table, captioned, "When dead weight gets offended." 3 more techs left the same week. One didn't even collect their final paycheck. The team left behind ran from fire to fire. Fires started by Brandon's ignorance. Legacy servers blinked warnings. Client portals slowed to a crawl. One executive assistant filed a ticket because the time-off tracker showed her as a temp with 0 accrued hours, despite 10 years of service. The help desk escalated it to Brandon. His reply? "Sync delay, reboot HR." But I saw everything, not from Slack or dashboards. Those were already failing. I watched through the old shells. Command line sentinels built before cloud dashboards became mandatory, before collaboration became a requirement, before the web interface replaced wisdom. They weren't pretty, but they told the truth. And the truth was this: the system wasn't dying because it was old. It was dying because no one respected what kept it alive. It wasn't bad code. It wasn't fragile infrastructure. It was ego, neglect, willful ignorance. I had written comments in those scripts. Clear, cold, Precise. Do not delete this call. Trust me. This runs cleanup for the secondary log buffer. Yes, it looks useless. It's not. Brandon had deleted every one of them. I knew because I had watched his commits from my encrypted shell. Line by line, 3 files gone. Each one, a blood vessel cut. Now the system was bleeding out. And me? I closed my terminal, stood up, stretched. My joints cracked like old wood. Then I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I recognized the moment every architect sees coming, the one they're never thanked for. Entropy, dressed in a tailored blazer, holding a clipboard, calling itself progress. The payload dropped on a Monday morning. Of course it did. Mondays are for fresh starts, and system failures disguised as innovation. Brandon had spent the prior Friday bragging in the all-hands meeting about a lean deal he'd cut with an offshore dev team. Something about streamlining the back end and replacing the outdated database stack. The update was pushed at 3:12 a.m. Eastern. By 7:46 a.m., the help desk lit up like a Christmas tree. By 8:05, payroll was dead. Employees logged in to see nothing. 0 balances, no history. Some accounts even said they owed the company money. Then the client portal collapsed. Logins failed, then reversed, then displayed gibberish, or in one case, a slideshow of birthday photos that didn't belong to anyone on the client roster. HR was next. Employee files vanished. Performance reviews gone. Onboarding systems crashed. Anyone who tried to clock in was marked as deceased. Inside HQ, panic hit like a flash flood. Executives stormed the hallways, shouted, slammed doors. Brandon locked himself in the war room with a Red Bull and a trembling intern. I imagined him pounding his keyboard, throwing buzzwords at the system like spells, hoping one might magically reverse a disaster. Meanwhile, I was 87 miles away, cross-legged on a shaggy rug, staring into the soft glow of a terminal window. Log feed. DB. Thing. Fail cache. Flush attempt fail. O hub B01. Unreachable due R. Trigger. Init phase /3 engaged. The system wasn't crashing. It was defending itself. Years ago, I had embedded defensive logic in the DR scripts. Not to destroy, not to punish, just to contain. If contamination reached critical level, isolate. If redundancy failed, lock replication. If heartbeat overrides 0 and no recovery, freeze everything. Not revenge, protocol. The rot had touched everything now. I took a sip of cold coffee. My hands were steady. Then it came. Another ping. Heartbeat from the Oslo backup node, one of the few still untouched, still loyal. I entered my credentials into an old VPN, deprecated 5 years ago, but preserved in my underground network like an heirloom seed. The dashboard loaded, 7 toggles, each labeled in my shorthand. QTY04. Payload. Shunt DAR silo. Gate. 1. Mesyl site. Toggle. Kill chain init. The last one pulsed a soft amber. Available. Not active. Waiting. Clicking it wouldn't bring the system down. That had already started. Clicking it would lock the descent. No rollback. No duct tape. Just finality. My cursor hovered. I didn't click. Not yet. Elsewhere, a junior tech, maybe Michael's replacement, maybe just another unlucky hire, stumbled across a printed sheet deep inside a battered doc binder. Camille's handwriting, blue ink. Landline stays plugged in. If it doesn't, bad things escalate. You won't see it at first. But they'll come. The kid looked up. Who's Camille? No one answered. Because no one remembered. And me? I closed the terminal. Let the toggle blink. The system had been built to ask before it burned. But it was also built to remember, especially when no one listened. By Tuesday morning, the company was no longer in free fall. It had hit the ground. A headline appeared in the industry news feed. Mid-tier SaaS firm loses federal contract amid system meltdown. SEC audit incoming. Gerald Wilcox, the COO, read it on his tablet during an emergency strategy call and whispered, "Shit." The client wasn't just any client. It was the client. Department of Health Services. A 7-figure annual contract. Terminated overnight with a 2-sentence email. One of those sentences included the word irreparable. Then the alerts rolled in. Data retention violations, payroll inconsistencies, credential mismatches. Compliance failures. No one could find the failover token. No one even knew where it had been stored. The last log entry on the recovery server read, "Primary lost. Waiting for authorized restoration." It had been stuck there for 18 hours. And then, finally, legal arrived. Too late. Too confused. Too little understanding. They pulled logs, read code comments, interviewed what was left of the IT department. One brave intern said, "There was a phone. Camille told us not to unplug it." Legal raised eyebrows. At 1:17 p.m., an email landed in Camille's inbox. Subject: Urgent. System down. Please help. From Wilcox@companybody.com. Camille, we're experiencing a critical outage across all core systems. We've exhausted internal options and believe you may be uniquely positioned to assist. We understand the situation is unusual, but we're asking, both as a company and as people, if you could help us restore functionality. We are prepared to compensate you fairly for your time and expertise. Respectfully, Gerald Wilcox, Chief Operating Officer. There was no apology, no ownership, just corporate desperation in formal fonts. Camille sat in silence, slippers on, cat asleep beside her. The fireplace crackled softly. She opened the email, read it twice, paused at the phrase, "uniquely positioned to assist." Her cursor hovered over reply, then drifted away. She closed the tab. Back at HQ, Brandon was unraveling, red-faced, yelling, locked in a server bay like a desperate Roomba, blaming DNS issues, offshore vendors, zero-day exploits. "This isn't my fault," he shouted. "No one told me we had a backup site in Delaware." Someone corrected him. "It's in Pennsylvania." Meanwhile, Gerald quietly authorized unlocking the corporate credit card. Legal drafted a consulting contract, triple Camille's old salary. The CFO asked if flowers were appropriate. HR dug through her exit paperwork. There was no forwarding number, no email, nothing. Only a line of code someone finally noticed in a deprecated script. Maintained by Camille J. If you're reading this, something went very wrong. No one could explain who deleted that script 2 weeks earlier. They didn't need to. Then Wednesday came, and with it, consequences. Camille's final protocol activated. Not dramatic, just precise. A dozen emails arrived in executive inboxes. Subject: System Autopsy. Avoidable failure, chronology. Inside, screenshots of deleted scripts, timestamps of failover blockages, audio clips of Brandon dismissing alerts, a spreadsheet labeled Ignored Alerts and Their Consequences, a zipped folder named Legacy, Cost Z, Zip, encrypted, but with full unlock instructions. At the bottom, a note. "It could have been avoided. You just had to ask." Gerald sat frozen, clicking through files with a white-knuckled grip. Ria, the lead forensic auditor, leaned over and whispered, "She built this by hand. It's beautiful." In the company Slack, the leadership channel blew up. CUU. Who else got that email? CFO. Me. It's real. Legal. We are in deep exposure. Brandon. This is manipulation. She's weaponizing obsolete architecture. And mid-sentence, his icon grayed out. Disconnected. Camille had hard-coded a command. buried in a dormant admin credential behind a permissions group called Dr. Locksmith. No warning, no fanfare, just gone. She took a sip of burnt coffee. Perfect. Later that morning, she sat on a driftwood log by the ocean, hoodie hanging loose, feet buried in the cool sand. No Slack pings, no server alarms, just the sea and the wind. Her laptop screen dimmed. She didn't close it, just let it time out like a sunset. Beside her, duct taped to a battery pack, was her desk phone. Beige, boxy, cord curled like a sleeping snake. It vibrated once. Not a call, just a heartbeat. Still connected, still loyal, still beating. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. Legacy didn't die. It waited.